The Boston Celtics are feeling what it's like not to play the Orlando Magic. The lessons the Magic gave them and the lessons the Celtics gave in return, plus the other side of the trade equation today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 7th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the lesson the Orlando Magic should have taught the Boston Celtics, but they didn't heed in Game 1, and why that lesson matters as the Magic continue to move forward. We're going to get to that and the other side of the trade equation coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. I know I'm recording in the mornings now, so I may not be your actual first listen today, but we appreciate you sitting, waiting on that upload, waiting on that download so that you can listen to Locked On Magic as your first listen of the day. We're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you followed me on the pod, you know I'm into lessons. I'm into learning from what's going on around the league. The Magic may be done, but the study is not. And we'll get to playoff lessons. I'll talk about some teams that I think are interesting and teams that are can teach the Magic something about team building and patience and all the things it takes to be championship teams. If you don't learn from the teams that are successful, that make it this far in the playoffs, what are you doing? And if you've listened to this pod again for long enough, you know I have another big saying that the playoffs are the greatest teacher. The playoffs expose every single one of your flaws. They show you exactly who you are and what you need to work on, because with a 7-game series, teams have time to pick apart your weaknesses. They will tell you exactly what you need to do and how you need to fix it. Now, for the last 2 years, the Magic in the playoffs have been the young team. Like, they're still a very, very young team. And you could bet on a lot of internal improvement to fix some of these issues. Paolo Banchero's turnover issues, well, give him the ball more, give him more reps as a leader, give him more, give him that playoff experience. He will be better. And guess what? Paolo Banchero was better in this year's playoffs than he was last year's playoffs. Incredibly so against a very strong Celtics defense. The Magic left that series with Boston giving them a lot of respect and giving Paolo a lot of respect. This is a critical and important series for Paolo Banchero. No one's denying it. No one's getting around it. No one's ignoring it. The other part of that, though, is what did the Magic learn from their series? Now, look, we're going to get to what those real needs are. We're going to circle back to this at the end of the show, because I think people sometimes don't quite have the needs pinned down for what this team is looking for, as evidenced by some of the trade ideas that I've seen out there already. What I was interested in, though, was how the Magic impacted the Celtics. We talked with John Corrales twice on this show of Locked On Celtics. Go listen to Locked On Celtics if you want to keep following Boston's run to the playoffs. And I made it very, very clear. Look, Orlando probably doesn't have enough firepower, doesn't have enough offense to keep up with Boston. They got to play perfect. And they did for long stretches of time. But Boston's going to feel them. It may be a 5-game series, but Boston is going to feel Orlando. They're going to know they played the Magic. And maybe that explains why they lost Game 1. Maybe it doesn't. But there was a key lesson for both the Magic and the Celtics that was on full display in Game 1. Now, look, the Celtics got some good shots. They took 63s. They missed 45. Boston makes their threes. They hold on to a 20-point lead. They probably win Game 1, and all this point is moot. But if you watch the fourth quarter of that game against Boston, they looked like they were getting tired. Our apologies. That's what we do to teams. That's what the Magic do to teams. They looked a little tired, but they also settled for threes. And it felt like Boston just felt this weight off their shoulders. That they were no longer being chased around by the Magic. They were no longer being bottled up by the Magic. That they were no longer, that they could finally take some threes. It felt like they were trying to make up for all the three-pointers they didn't get in the first round series. Boston averaged 48 threes per game during the regular season. Per 100 possessions. Per 100 possessions, the Celtics averaged 49.6 three-point attempts per 100 possessions during the regular season. The most threes they took in any game against the Magic were 37. Games 1 and 2, they took 37 threes. Big factor in those games. Reason why those were the game 5 was a blowout too, but also because of three-point shooting. In the series against the Magic, the Celtics took 34.4 three-point attempts per 100 possessions. In game 1, again, they took 63s total. They took 59.4. Orlando effectively cut off one of Boston's biggest three-point weapons. And look, there's a lot of other numbers that go into it because the reason why I want to do per 100 possessions is because the pace was so slow in the Magic series. There's just so few possessions. Game 1 and 2, they were more in line with how they played in the regular season. The percentage of three-point attempts to field goal attempts was much higher. The Celtics hung around 41%. It was much closer to that games 1 and 2, but Orlando slowly kind of choked out Boston's three-point shooting. If Boston was going to beat Orlando, they had to find a different way. And that's, at least watching the second half against New York in game 1, that's not what Boston did. Boston tried to force their three-point style, tried to impose their three-point style. And look, maybe they make some of those shots. Certainly they make some of those shots. The game went to overtime. It's a very different ballgame. But this is the ultimate lesson. The lesson the Celtics should have taken from this Magic series, and the lesson that I think the Magic need to get out of that series, is to win in the playoffs, you've got to be able to play different styles. You can't just be one thing. You can't just play one way. And the Celtics, after game 5 and exiting the series, were very thankful for the challenge the Magic gave them, for making them prove they could win a mid-range jumper game, that they could win this gritty, dirty, slow-down game. And the fact that Boston could is A, why they won the series, and B, why they are a championship-level team. And as they get ready for tonight's game 2, that is the lesson I want them to remember. I want Boston to win. Sorry to our friends at Locked On Knicks. That's the lesson they need to remember. You have to be able to win different ways. You have to be able to win however the game calls for you to win. To me, this is one of the key problems with the way the Magic are currently constructed. The Magic are so reliant on their defense. And we saw this throughout the series, that any momentary lapse, any imperfect game, put them in a heap of trouble, put them in a bad spot, put them in a spot that they couldn't win. And so, we talk about this, it's about diversity. I honestly, this is why Indiana, which, for lack of a better way to phrase it, runs a little bit of a gimmick offense. You have, just like teams have to be overly prepared for what Orlando is going to do defensively. Indiana and Orlando are mirrors of each other. Indiana runs the super fast-paced offense. They don't, get up a ton of threes, but they play quick. You got to be on your toes. And, the Magic are one of the few teams in the league that consistently slow it down because of how good their defense is. But this is the thing about Indiana is they find ways, if you slow them down, they still find pockets to play their style. And the addition of Pascal Siakam allowed them to play a little slower at times. The Pacers are what they are because they figured out how to play their style in a game that doesn't fit their eye. And look, that's what happened last night against Cleveland to some extent. As we look ahead to the offseason, as we look ahead to what the Magic are going to be, what the Magic are going to try and do, to me, this is as big as anything else. Yes, add offense, scoring, creation, shooting, all the things we're going to talk about at the end of the show. But the Magic also have to find ways to be a little bit more diverse. It's about offensive diversity, having multiple players who can attack and get to the basket and be creators and scorers, so that Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner don't have to carry that massive weight. Yes, it's about some nights the defense doesn't have it and you got to score 120 points. The Magic knew entering that series against Boston that if they got to 110 points, the Magic weren't going to be able to get there. The Magic scored 100 points in just one game in the series. And that's a credit to Boston's defense, but it's also a statement of how bad Orlando's offense is. The Magic need to be able to score 120 points against teams that aren't the Sacramento Kings. Sorry, Sacramento, we love you. The Magic have to find a way to play the way the game is giving them. And not just be the team that mucks it up. And that is the goal of the offseason, to create this offensive diversity, this play style diversity, this ability to roll with what the game is giving you if you can impose your style on the game for whatever reason. It's an 82-game season. You got to be able to win multiple ways. And in the playoffs, especially because of it's so matchup dependent, you got to be able to win multiple ways. And again, that's what Boston should have learned. That's what they had to do to beat the Magic. And we'll see if that's what they've learned about how to beat the Knicks in Game 2. So we're already thinking about what the Magic should acquire, who the Magic should go after. We can't forget the other side of the equation. What the Magic are offering and who is really on the chopping block. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. Moved on to the next person on, do people use phone books anymore? I don't know. You moved on to the next search item on Google. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app. The shared inbox feature is truly a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat, and their AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. We're all focused, obviously, on who the Magic are going to get. And we should be. Like, the Magic should have their list of players they want to target. They should be, once they can, and they can now, actually, there's no restrictions to trades at this point. They should be engaging on what these are. And look, they got time. So I would say don't be engaging necessarily with teams now. Do the autopsy on the season, really pin down what those needs are, really pin down who those targets are, and then begin reaching out. We still got the draft lotteries on Monday. That's a big day, obviously. That sets the draft order in stone. And then you look at like who else you're going after or whatever. This is the easy part. Saying, you go window shopping, but then comes the bartering. Then comes to figure out, okay, well, what's that going to cost us? Jeff Weltman made it very, very clear on exit interviews that part of the trade deadline struggle was the Magic were not looking to add increased salary, and we're not looking to run their books up. And they felt like the players that they were chasing, the players that they were after, for the short-term gain they were getting, the cost was too high. How much of that has changed? That is like the ultimate question now. How much is really changed? And look, I do believe things change in the offseason. I think teams are more open to deals. They're more open to kind of mutually beneficial deals. The trade deadline is all about buyers and sellers, and teams do rake you over the coals a little bit. I do think there are better deals to make in the offseason as opposed to at the trade deadline. But the Magic have to think about the other side of the equation. What are they willing to give up? We talked about this a little bit earlier, but like there are several players that are on team options that, that the Magic have to make decisions on first, knowing that they're probably trying to reduce some payroll, or not reduce payroll, but trying to stay under that first apron if they can. It feels very unlikely that they'll pick up team options for Gary Harris, Corey Joseph, and I'm still 50-50 on Caleb Houston. Depends on what else they want to do. Now, they could easily pick up Gary Harris's option and use him as a trade chip, but that almost guarantees they will be above the first apron. Essentially, if the Magic and Mo Wagner's the other team option, I think they're going to pick that team option up. I don't think they're going to decline that option. If you take away all those players, all the players on team options, the Magic are according to my math at least, about $12 million under the luxury tax. Mo Wagner's $11 million puts them right at the tax line, and that does not include the draft picks. This is why Jeff Weltman was pretty adamant about saying we're swapping players now. And so, honestly, I look at the Magic's books, and my suspicion is they're literally looking to swap salaries. If they're trading Gary Harris, they want $8 million back and not a whole lot more. Now, they can take on a little bit more money. Because they're just a hair over the first apron. They got a little bit of room. You got about $10, $11, $12 million before you get to the second apron. This is not a second apron team. There are restrictions under the first apron, and they are a little bit onerous. They do limit a little bit what you can do. The Magic are also planning and preparing for Paolo Banchero's extension to hit, so they're not looking to take on a ton of long-term salary. So, like, everyone who thinks the Magic are going to go after, like, Trae Young or LaMelo Ball or Ja Morant, that's not happening. The Magic are not being a second apron team unless they know they're a championship contender. And those players don't guarantee you a championship contender. To get those players, you would have to give up Jalen Suggs, and I don't think the Magic are quite there yet. So then, who are they shopping on the trade market? Who is on the other side of this equation? I think ultimately, like the big trade chip the Magic have is Goga Bitadze. Goga Bitadze makes about $8.5 million this season. He bumps up to $9 million next season. There are a lot of teams that would take Goga Bitadze. I think Goga Bitadze is going to be one of the hottest trade items on the market. He is a proven starter-capable center for all his flaws, for the reasons why the Magic didn't start him this year, didn't play him this year. But he's a luxury. He is a rotation caliber player the Magic are not using. Love Goga Bitadze. I love that he has saved his career, that he has found his place in the NBA. It ain't in Orlando. I was shocked he re-signed with Orlando when he did at last summer. I'm happy that he did. Obviously, the Magic needed him, and I still believe, the Magic need a backup center. Wendell Carter just had the healthiest season of his career. For all the other things you want to talk about Wendell Carter, he played. He was available. Goga Bitadze is probably the biggest trade chip the Magic have. But again, it's only $8 million, $8.5, $9 million. There are things that work. Austin Reeves for Goga Bitadze works as long as it's done before July 1st. And obviously other parts have to be added to that deal. But there's something there. There might still be interest in Wendell Carter, even with his contract, even with the salary that he's going to take on next season. He's still $15 million this season. He's still under the old deal this season. This is last season under his old deal before his salary bumps up to around $19-20 million. Again, this could be a cost-cutting move, but the Magic could look to shop Wendell Carter to get, again, that $15 million player. That's like a Colin Sexton this year or Kobe White this year. That would cut some salary, but then you got to re-sign them in the long term. I am a big believer that, you guys know me. I'm a Wendell Carter supporter. I like what he does. I think he really fits this team's defensive capabilities really well, unless he is so necessary to get a deal done. I don't think you trade him unless a better center option arrives. I've seen some people pitch me the Magic acquiring DeAndre Ayton in an Anthony Simons deal, of like expanding that deal out a little bit. I don't love it. I don't hate it. But like, that's the kind of deal I would want to move off of Wendell Carter. I'd want a center of equal or greater value. And we can debate whether DeAndre Ayton is that, but put that one on the back burner, put that on the table. It's there. It's not crazy. It's not crazy. Someone pitched it to me. Now I was like, I don't love it because I have questions about DeAndre Ayton, but I can't dismiss it. I think there is something there. I think there is a framework there to make that happen. Helps Portland relieve some salary. He's expiring. He's coming to the end of his deal. Magic take on a little bit more money in that sense, but there you have it. Especially if they're also grabbing Simons, who is an increase in salary from what the Magic have as well. I think it's unlikely, but feasible. And right now, like the way my process works with trades, I need frameworks. Goga Bitadze for Austin Reeves. That's not a done deal, but it's a framework. It works. The math works. Now it's just, okay, how do we get this over the finish line to where we're both comfortable? Probably costs the Magic a first-round pick. The Lakers might want to throw in Gabe Vincent. I think the Magic would be okay taking Gabe Vincent. It's stuff like, it's adding on the details, but the framework is there. Similar thing with like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I think the Magic will be shopping Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I don't think they will hang up the phone. He obviously had a difficult season. He's got 2 years left at around $44 million. Player option on the third year. The Magic probably understand what they need in that starting lineup is not what Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is giving them. And so unless they plan to move him into the Gary Harris role, which would be a very expensive Gary Harris, mind you, I think there is a real possibility that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is the big chip that gets moved. Again, if the Magic are simply just replacing salaries, $22 million is a big chip. That is a big-time player. And the Magic, frankly, just need more. Now, look, the salary cap is increasing. It's $22 million isn't as big as it sounds anymore. Like Wendell Carter's $19, $20 million salary next year or 2 years from now, not as big as it sounds anymore. Especially when you have Jalen Suggs making 33, Franz making 34, and then Paolo eventually making 37, 38. Those numbers aren't as big as they seem. Those numbers are. Those are like the max, the high-end guys. 20 million is not what it used to be. Inflation is real, people. But yeah, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is probably on the trade block a little bit. There is one other player, though, that I think this whole offseason swings on. And the Magic's ability to get things done is going to come down to their decision on one player. I'm going to save that for our third segment. We're going to talk about the player who will swing this offseason and pin down those real needs coming up here in just a moment. As much as I tried to tease it, you're probably not going to be surprised by who I think swings this offseason. And ultimately, I think this is the biggest decision that the Magic have to make. It's not only that it's the biggest decision the Magic have to make. It's not only all of that. I see fans debating it too. Yeah, I pop into some fan conversations. I listen to what you guys are saying. I think there is real division, certainly among fan base, about what Anthony Black's going to become. And we are now halfway through his rookie contract. One gem that I'd still retain from the Rob Hennigan era is you kind of know who guys are by the end of their rookie contracts. It's very rare for a player to suddenly become much more after 4 seasons. And we can debate whether there was the right use of the number 6 pick. That debate is moot. They did it. Did they maximize that spot? Doesn't appear so. But you got to work with what you got. And yeah, we could judge Jeff Weltman's drafting history another day. Anthony Black showed us this season what his potential is, why he can be a very special player, why he can be a very good player. But he also showed us that there's still so much more room to grow. The Magic put a lot on his plate this year. The Magic trusted him to be the backup point guard, trusted him to take on more of that ball handling responsibility, and he was up and down with it. Some nights he looked really good and really confident. Other nights he just faded into the background. Now, the Magic know what they're getting defensively from him. And again, we'll review players coming up here in the next couple of weeks. The Magic know what they're getting defensively, and offensively, I thought he really improved. His three-point shot came along really well as the season went on. But AB also disappeared a little bit in the playoffs. Look, that was his first playoffs. I'm not freaking out about it. I'm not going crazy over it. But the Magic obviously need more. We're playing a different game now. I made this comment to someone that if this were a 30-win team, you'd be starting Anthony Black. You wouldn't think twice about it. You let him make mistakes. You'd live with them. This is not a 30-win team. This is a team that aspires to be a 50-win team. This is a team that aspires to be a championship-level team. And they've got to deliver it. They've got to have players who deliver and perform. Ultimately, though, Anthony Black still has that new car smell. He's still got that rookie contract smell to him. And honestly, I think I said this back in February. Ultimately, the reason the Magic didn't, my suspicion is the reason the Magic didn't get a deal done at the deadline is they weren't ready to trade Anthony Black. They still believe in Anthony Black. They still believe in what he can do. They still believe in who he is and his potential. And look, we could say what we want. He finished the season really well. That faith was rewarded. Again, say what you want about the trade deadline. Say what you want about the Magic not doing anything. Short-term result, it worked. They went 12-6 after the All-Star, after that homestand. They went 12-6 over their last 18 games, 14-13 over their last, 13-12, sorry. 13-12 after the All-Star break. They thought they were getting Jalen Suggs back. There are a lot of factors at the All-Star break, and that deserves some examination, but Anthony Black rewarded their faith. But now you're playing a different ballgame. Do you have the time to wait on Anthony Black's development? Now, generally, I would say don't give up on young players. If a young player shows that he is capable, it's really bad advice to give up on him. It's a really bad idea. That's what happened with Victor Oladipo, although they didn't want to pay him the max. It's what happened with so many young players in this Magic system during this, decade-long rebuild. It's hard. But there is definitely a threshold that the Magic could clear that would say, yes, Anthony Black is worth this. Is it Anthony Simons? I suspect not, but it could be. Is it Colin Sexton? I don't think so. Is it Austin Reeves? I don't think so. But there is definitely a threshold of player where the Magic are willing to give up Anthony Black. And on top of that, since we are talking salaries and aprons and all that stuff, since we're talking all that stuff, Anthony Black's extension's coming up. He's got 2 years left on his contract. He's not getting an extension next summer. Like that's understandable. They'll wait till restricted free agency. But the Magic have to start planning, how are we going to pay all our young players? That's why Cole Anthony is probably as much on the trade block as anybody, as much as we all love Cole. Cole is a $13, $14 million contract that you can move. Again, the Magic have a lot of contracts right in that sweet spot of you're going to get quality players back if you can just get the right sweeteners to grease the wheels. That is one thing, you could argue about the quality of the players Jeff Weltman has paid for, and certainly they did not perform this year, and there's a little bit of hand-wringing about what you're going to get back, but because of how poorly a lot of players played last year, but the Magic are lined up with their books to get quality players. I'm not upset about how the books are lined up. So Cole Anthony is on the other side of that trade equation too. But the Magic don't want to be a second apron team. I think they want to bounce between the first apron and the luxury tax for the time being. They know Paolo's salary is about to dramatically increase. They know they're in the midst of these big extensions. How much are they going to be willing to pay Anthony Black? Now, obviously, some of that is how good is Anthony Black actually, but that's part of this equation too. And if there's a player that's really good and it only costs you Cole Anthony or Goga Batadze and Anthony Black, and that player can make a difference, that might be worth pursuing. It might be. That is the big question. And again, balancing this trade equation, it's new for the Magic. They haven't had to act this way in a very long time. But balancing this trade equation is going to be very, very important. And the Magic have some things to offer, have imperfect things to offer, but they're going to have to make the right value and the right decisions to make this thing work. I did not get to the real needs for the Orlando Magic. We'll save that for tomorrow because I'm out of time today. But I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the ways to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go check out the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We're going to save those needs for tomorrow. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we'll talk pinning down the real needs for the Orlando Magic, what the Magic should actually be chasing. Plus, I'll give you my outline. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I will give you my outline on the perfect Orlando Magic offseason, what I think the Magic need to do this offseason. The episode fits better together this way anyway, so I'm glad I'm delaying this segment. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, but until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.